Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CLSR, and I'm your host, the counselor. Today, we're going to be talking about pathological liars. You see, when we were younger, we'd hear some of these kids rambling on, and of course, back then they rambled on so much we just dismissed them. However, unbeknownst to ourselves, they grew up to be adults who become pathological liars, and it's harder to dismiss them. They keep coming back. And the problem is that we've just dismissed them. We never really understood what was going on. And I think if you are a pathological liar, people are going to dismiss you as crazy, right? And you're going to look at them and I don't know, some of these people just can't stop themselves. They just keep rhyming on, and it doesn't really matter. See, when you're younger, kids would just move out of the way. But now it's complex. People are lying right to your face, and it seems like every time they get around you, they got some other story to tell. And you listen, and we're very accommodating when we get older, right? Because we're listening to the pathological liars. But sometimes, and you know what I'm talking about, when you get to yourself or with your partner, and you just had a dinner, and you notice that adult person is doing some serious pathological lying because they're not directly related to you, you're talking about them. Like, you're just like, really? Does this person really understand what they're telling me? Do they realize that they're pathological? And what can we do about it? How do we stop these people? I'm not talking about regular liars, people who lie. And the funny thing is, when people get caught lying, it's just like a total breakdown. But I think what we need to do, instead of just dismissing people, we got to get a hold of this thing. We got to look at it deeper. What is going on with these people? I mean, this is some serious psychology. This is where you got to say to yourself, this person is not funny anymore. Those stories are not amusing, right? Actually, they're starting to hurt because it's like you're worried for the person. And I think if we are worried about the people, because if this goes, you know, too far and you get worried, you're concerned that this person's not dealing with reality. Or are they? Well, see, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how do we cope with someone who's being or acting like a pathological liar. How do we cope with that? First, we got to understand a little bit about pathological, because that term right there is path. It's almost like somebody's going down some, some path that, there's no reasoning anymore. It's almost like they're on a mission. They're going somewhere with it, but really they're not. So we have to understand what pathological really is. And this, you can refer to pathological in a few different terms. This pathological lying, right? Mythomania or pseudologia fantastica, right? This is chronic compulsive behavior. Now, this is not the same as telling the occasional white lie to avoid hurting someone's feelings or getting in trouble. No, this is far different. This seems to be a lie for no real reason at all. And that's when it gets frustrating for us. It's hard to know what to do, especially if you believe someone. And I'm not talking about the boy who cried wolf story, right? Like, that has a certain tone to it, but this is much more serious, right? It's been recognized seriously for well over a century. However, there's not really been a definition. It's just you've been called a liar. They have not clarified, right? And what they do know, according to the research, is that this person may have a mental condition, such as an antisocial personality disorder, sociopathy. That's another name for it. No medical reason for this behavior, but it's called sociopathy. And we have to really get to understand and define this pathological liar. This person who lies compulsively, right? They just there's no real reason. It's not really understood why people go to a full extent of just carrying on lie after lie. Some lies seem to be told in order to make some person feel like they're heroic in some sense, or just to gain some acceptance or some sympathy. Well, there's really nothing to be gained from these lies, but that person has the perception that there is. And there are those who suggest that issues affecting the central nervous system may predispose this person, right, to pathological lying, compulsive lying, right? This is a personality trait. And this antisocial, we use the term, but a lot of people don't understand. It's antisocial personality disorder. And there are causes. Some people say it's from trauma, head injuries. And I got to tell you something. No, I'm going on record to let you know. I've seen some kids when I was growing up in the less affluent neighborhoods, and these kids, right, I couldn't understand. I did dismiss them like a lot. We laugh, we joke, but when I hear trauma and head injuries, I get really uneasy. It's almost like the hair stands up on the back of my neck because now that I reflect back to it, right? I think some of my friends who were getting in trouble and we were friends, we got along well. However, there was some real aggression in the home, beating on the bum, beating with the belt, beating upside the head. And I think that now that I see half of these friends of mine sitting in jail or struggling, I think that's due to some of this trauma. And it's funny because some of them that really went wrong, that mean really went wrong, I'm thinking, this is a part of it. This is what has happened. And if you really think about those people, those were the ones that were pathological liars. And you're just like, this person is not even in reality, so I don't even know what their future is going to be like. And that you don't really think about it when you're coming up with them, but then when you look back, you go, the person didn't seem that like they were destined to go down that wrong path because it didn't seem like they were operating in reality. And when I think about the trauma and the head injuries that the young people have gone through, and I know the research has been out there for years, but see, some of us in our culture are raising our kids, many different cultures, but certain black cultures, right? Not all black cultures, but we have a discipline to them. And I've seen some parents, not all parents, but there are some parents who use that physical hand. And I'm like, now I know what happens when that's used on our children. And that's why it's so wrong to be hitting our kids upside the head, whatever. That physical abuse, no, there's a history behind that. But this pathological lying explains a lot to me now that I'm understanding this. I can correlate to what some of these people have gone through, right? Because when you think of what happens in the brain when you lie, right? They're like the person is telling untruths and it becomes frequent, right? And it fuels dishonesty, distrust. So when we start to look at it a little bit deeper, we start to see how some of this behavior has really manifested through the time and how it could be related to a lot of young men living in the cell there in behind the block, you know what I mean, locked down because maybe this is something that they had experienced. And I'm telling you, we take for granted how versatile we have to be, but we are very resilient human beings, but we cannot ignore what is happening to us in our travels. Some of these experiences and these traumatic events, like there there's correlation clearly. And now that you are starting to understand that this behavior, instead of dismissing the people who are pathological liars, let's start to try to understand them. And see, I find that we have a lot of media out there. We got a lot of shock media. We got a lot of attention and entertaining media. What we are lacking out there is we're really lacking understanding ourselves and understanding how some of our children and the people who are operating in society and those ones that are laying on the highway or those ones that are, having difficulties finding their way. Some of it is in behind these behaviors that we dismiss, and we should not do that. We owe it to ourselves because these people could be us, they could be our children. And if we understand what we're even talking about today, just a little bit, we're going to help them. We're going to help them see that there's a brighter future and we're going to help them work through it. Because First, we have to understand what's the problem? What is the cause? And I'm telling you right now, I know that physical abuse on any level, any culture, you got to keep this in mind. This is what happens. And it's because you're messing with that brain and you're damaging that brain. And it has long-term effects, and it comes through this pathological lying, right? And it seems like the lies have no clear benefit. They're telling stories, and it's usually dramatic, complicated, and they're very detailed. See, pathological liars are great storytellers. Think about it. Think about everything that you're seeing, even on television. It's about storytelling. Any presenter out there who's on stage, they're storytelling. I don't care what it is. Take down a piece of paper with your pen, tear it down, and just observe one of your movies or one of the presenters on YouTube, and you will see that they're storytelling. And I'll be honest with you, some of them are pathological liars because they have to be. Why are they pathological liars? They have to be pathological liars because what do? 99.9% of them, they promise us wealth. Now, if all these people are in the media promising us wealth when we know only, less than 5% of the population are wealthy, we got some pathological liars in our face. But we want to see these pathological liars have tapped into us. And now that you understand about the pathological, you're going to be enlightened. You're going to be enlightened and you're going to be relieved, because when you're on that hook for that last minute strategy that they're teaching you to buy their product, or they got time limits, there is a machine going on out there, that propaganda machine. And when we have pathological liars, we can't take them lightly. We have to look at them not just in our children, throughout society, so that we can understand the difference between our wants and our needs. A lot of us wants, but what do we need? What we need is some clarity. We need to understand that we got to look at each other and learn about each other. Not just be entertained, but obviously that's the flavor of the day. So what I'm saying is there's some storytellers, and we can't just say they're the downtrodden. They're the ones that's laying on the street. Some of them are laying in the $1 million houses or the multi-million-dollar houses. So you got to watch what they're saying, and you got to watch what they're telling your children. And you got to watch the messages that are coming in the music. See, the beat is one thing, but what about the messages in the music? What are we telling our young people? And see, we take that for granted today. The music is coming at us so fast and so hard that too many of you are just listening to the beat. You don't care if they're calling bitches, hoes, the N-word, or if they're talking about, violating children. Like, some people, they don't even know what they're listening to. And that's what's sad. And we got to get a grip. But they're storytelling. And there's a lot of pathological lying going on, right? And it's detailed, it's colorful, it's entertaining, over the top. And one thing is for sure, you got to be convincing. And the more convincing you have to be, the more lies you tell. Oh yeah, they're going to tell a million of us buy our product or, purchase our service because we're going to make you rich overnight. Well, of course they got to tell us that. And if we have 10 cents in our head, we're going to think about that and go, wait, you're the only one getting rich. You're the only one getting rich. And even if I do elevate myself a little bit, I got to go after all these other people. If that's your game, that's fine. I'm just saying we have to understand and learn about the pathological liars out there. And they usually portray themselves as a hero or the victim, either or. I'm the multimillionaire. I got $1 billion and this is what I got and you want to get it. Or, you know what? I can't do this and I need this. Like, it's either or. They're storytellers. And these pathological liars tend to tell lies that seem to be geared towards gaining your admiration, your sympathy, or some sort of acceptance by other people. And believe it or not, there are people that listen to their own lies so long that what? They have a tendency to believe what they're telling you. And it doesn't matter what you do. And what the scary part is, if somebody's using the religion and they're in there telling some stories, and this is the scariest thing that I find. If people are following something because somebody's up there telling some lies, and there's a bunch of people believing it, and they can't decipher between the truth or the lies, and just because they have a title. See, this is the thing. When people got titles, we have a tendency to believe them. It's just in our nature. We want to believe them. But when they got the title, they could tell us anything. They could be lying to us. A lot of times they are. Salespeople, you buy a product. How many times did you buy a product out there, right? You take it home, you get the warranty, and then when you got to claim the warranty, they got some story to tell you. You should have known. You should have known they were pathological liars, because you know why I say they're pathological? Because they're doing it to everybody that walks through that door. They're lying to them. There's something that they're not telling you. And the reason why they're not telling you is because they want to get that sale. And I'm telling you right now, you are not awake. A lot of you are sleeping. You're following a pattern. You're in the twilight zone. It's true. You're waking up every day doing the same thing. Your eyes ain't even open to some of this foolishness. And you're wondering why your kids are running around going through all these changes, because they can't decipher between fiction and nonfiction. They don't know what's real, right? And remember, these pathological liars, be careful, because they could strip you of a lot of things just through their conversation. They're so detailed. Their performance, their natural performance. They're eloquent. They know how to engage their people when they're speaking. Very creative individuals, quick thinkers too, right? And they don't usually give themselves away, these pathological liars. No, they don't, right? You don't usually see signs of the lying. Like, you don't. When they're really good, when they're pathological, a lot of them, you won't even see them skip a beat. They won't even pause in front of you or avoid eye contact. Oh, no, they're not slipping, because their game is tight. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know they cannot take breaks, because I'll give you time to think and sit back and observe. Rarely do we do that today. Do we observe? When somebody asks us a question, we think automatically we have to respond, because we're not comfortable with the pauses. We're not. You ever sit across from somebody and then you're getting into a conversation and the conversation's going good? Then all of a sudden, when that conversation's quiet, you both look like you're on another planet. Like, oh, what do I say now? There's so much going on through your mind, but you can't stand that silence. So you start talking some garbage that really nobody's interested, but you're trying to fill the void. Well, these pathological liars, they got that down to a science. They know. They know this all about you. They're smart. Nobody said they're not smart. They're smart. And see, this is the thing. When you have them, be careful, because they're crafty. And that's why we're talking about it. Because pathological lies, we have to be able to differentiate between the pathological and the little white lies. Right? They call them white lies. And even that term, white lies, that's kind of discriminatory. I don't really like using it, but it's a term that's been used. But white lies somehow lightens it up and makes us feel better. And that's why I don't really like using white lies. But I'm going to use it because I think that a lot of people have been, you know, raised on the belief that white lies aren't as serious, right? But they, in comparison to the pathological, they're a little on the lighter, definitely lighter. So we have to be able to differentiate between the two, because we need to know that most people lie at one time or another. Research says that we lie at least twice a day in some sort of way. And most of these lies are considered white lies. However, the pathological lies, on the other hand, are told consistently and habitually. And they usually don't have a point to them. And they're often continuous. But the white lies are occasional, and some people consider them to be harmless, without malicious intent. You know, some people doing some fibbing. Is that the term that they use? They call it fibbing, right? And some are told to spare another's feelings, you know, or avoid getting in trouble. Those are the white lies. Like, I give you an example. White lies could be when someone's saying that they have a headache or to get out of attending a meeting or they're not feeling well and they don't want to go to school. You know, sometimes kids could do that. Or saying you paid the bill when you didn't really pay it because you forgot to pay the bill. Or you have a lie about why you just happen to be late for work. So you're telling those little white lies. And they're not considered as serious. However, the pathological lies, you need to know this for sure. They're told frequently and compulsively, and they're usually told for no reason at all, or you know what I mean, or to gain something. And they're continuous, and they're told to make the teller appear heroic or the victim, right? And they're not deterred by guilt or risk of getting found out. Not at all. Not these liars, right? And this is like, what could I say? It's like almost somebody who's creating a false history, saying they've achieved something they actually didn't achieve. You know, I got a degree in this, and I went to this university. Right? We're all sitting at the burger joint. They're talking about degrees, totally not relevant, but who cares, right? And they're claiming, these ones, and some people get taken by this one where they're claiming to have a life-threatening illness that they actually don't have, and I mean that's men, women, all genders. They use it. And that's when, when they start that and then you find out, hey, they weren't pregnant at all. Or, hey, there's nothing wrong with him. And why is he doing this? He was telling us he was all sick. And see, those are the ones are pathological. Or if they're telling lies to impress others, such as how they're related to a famous person. We've all grown up with those ones, right? I remember this one guy who I knew growing up, and I haven't seen him in a while, but every time you seen him, he was talking about some major event that he went to because his father knew this important person, and you knew he was lying. So, because when you checked him and you said, "Hey, listen, we want to go next time," you're going, "Oh yeah, I'll let my dad know," and it never came up again. So when you check them, that could be dangerous. Don't just do it because you can see some pathological liar losing their grip, right? Then they just become pathological. So you don't usually check them; you just let them go because it is some cognitive thing going on, right? So don't just check them because some people have. And I recall when a friend of mine did check a person who was a pathological liar. And the truth is, it's really heartbreaking because you know what? They're trying so hard. And sometimes they get what they want, they get that sympathy. However, it could turn to pity. I do recall that person one time being checked, and a bunch of us were looking. Some were angry, but more often than not, we were really sad for the person. And you know those people where you feel bad for them and you go, it doesn't really matter. They're part of us. So we have to make them feel included even though. So it's not good to clamp down on them. And some people lack it, that empathy or even the sympathy because they don't want, they're frustrated. They're tired of the lies. So they do what? They just react. However, it doesn't end up good. So as long as we understand what the differences are, that's good. So when you identify a pathological liar in your life, you have to be careful. It's not always easy. It is human nature for us to be suspicious, right? Of especially of anything that appears to be too good to true. You heard about that, right? What did your parents say? If it appears to be too good to be true, it usually is, right? But we still, because we want so bad. I'm a victim of this too. Sometimes you want something so bad, you're just like, oh my God, this seems too good to be true. And then when you find out, oh, there's a trick to it, you get frustrated or you just get sad about it because you're like, I knew it. But don't get caught up in that. Just understand that usually if it's too good to be true, it usually is, right? And not all lies are told by pathological liars or over the top, but you just need to know that they tell regular lies, right? That someone without compulsion might tell, right? Here are some signs for us to identify the pathological liars in our life. They often will speak about experiences and accomplishments in which they appear heroic. We've established that. And we've established that they're also playing the victim role in many of their stories and often looking for sympathy. You know, right? Something happened to me and everybody's, right? Like recently, I know this is going to sound straight up rude. However, it's not. It's not rude or crude, but there's a politician out there that, had a terrible debate, and all of a sudden he's supposed to be under doctor's order because he caught this virus, right? And he's on the news in the last week talk about how he's in a situation, and they're explaining to the public how he might be on a breathing machine and going through all that, but at the same time, right, he's waving, entering cars with his entourage and at the public, you know, events. But it doesn't seem like he's really that serious. And then in the same breath, they're saying he'll be released a few days later. So it makes you wonder. And see, this is what I have to say as well. What is truth is that a lot of politicians are pathological liars. We don't know it because why? Why are they pathological liars? Some are pathological liars because they are telling you things because they want your vote, or they need to influence you, right? To gain your trust. So they're going to tell you whatever they think you want to hear. And so you have to be careful. This is why when it comes to politicians, I really strongly suggest that we have a track record of the work that they do, not just putting them in positions and then hoping for the best. That's what we're doing now. Silly. It's almost like it's ridiculous what we're doing. However, if we see people who are saying one thing but doing another, I'm very curious about those people. Right? And the funny thing is the only reason why you could really put your finger on it is because they're not the only politicians doing it. Think of the other politicians that have done it before. Like, I know that even in Canada, what was it? Justin Trudeau's wife, not him himself, but his wife had it. I'm not saying they deserve it, none of that. I'm saying they had it. And then I think in the UK, Boris had it, right? And all of a sudden they're getting out of it. Hey, a lot of people are coming out, but this is a strategy I think some of them are looking for, because some of them have had to deal with some issues. And I think it's a political strategy in a lot. Well, what are you talking about, counselor? Well, I'm talking about, okay, let's look at the Justin Trudeau. Maybe he doesn't have it because then the country might go, well, if he had it, maybe they'll, feel that there's a downturn and it might disrupt markets. So next best thing might be his wife. And I'm not saying they're faking it, but I'm not saying they're not. But there's a lot of strategy when it comes to politics. What else are they doing? The rest of us are working. So they're strategizing, right? Trying to keep them votes. Political party thing. So that's the Trudeaus. But what about Boris? Right? Over there. Well, he had the Brexit and he's still dealing with the Brexit. So my thing is there's a lot. Or the COVID-19 with him. A lot of people saying the UK's the numbers are jumping up again and he doesn't have an answer for it. Right? Well, what do you want? He's a comedian. Right? Donald Trump, entertainer, same thing. Look at that. It's funny how these people got it and they're in these countries that they have the best health care possible, but they're, using this in a What I'm saying is, even on the state side, we have to look at it and go, look at the numbers. They're climbing up too. So what happened? He had a debate. This one's having problems with the political scene over here. Not in favor with the public. How do we gain favor? It's a strategy. And so when I'm talking about pathological liars, I'm talking about put everything into context and look at them and see what's really going on. See, if the people can't see these things, they don't know which way to vote. They don't know who's telling the truth or not. We got to look at who's telling the truth. It's hard to see the truth because we have so many pathological liars. A lot of people are told to lie just to get what? To get votes. That's what it's about. It's hard to find the truth today. We don't know the difference between pathological lying and white lying. But we do know there is a major difference. But what we don't know is when it's being applied to us because a lot of people don't understand it. So now that we're talking about, we know that pathological liars tell those elaborate, detailed stories, right? And they respond elaborately and quickly to questions, right? And usually those responses are a little bit vague. And they don't provide too much of an answer to a question, right? They know if they say too much, they're giving themselves up. So the responses are quick to the point, right? And you will hear different versions of the same story. And that's because forgetting about the previous details that they had spilled out in another session that you were with them, right? And another time that you had gotten together and they told a story. It's changed a little bit, and it has, but you don't check them too much, right? Because we're just like, whatever. But the point is, you do notice the similarities. So how do we cope with these people? How do we deal with it? We have to know that a pathological liar can be deeply frustrating because the lying appears to be pointless. It can test the trust in any relationship and be extremely difficult to hold a conversation with this person. So there are a few things we need to understand about pathological liars. Don't lose it. Keep your composure. As frustrating as it may appear, it's important not to let your anger get the best of you. And that's why I said be careful when you're trying to confront a pathological liar. Don't be aggressive. Be supportive and kind, but be firm, right? You've seen it. You've seen people, and I've seen when people are frustrated with a pathological liar, they test them, right? Because they know there's a group of people who know they're lying. And so we always have one person in the group that's going to test the pathological liar. They're going to test them. And everybody feels bad for that person after. And that's what you don't do. We don't turn on them. We have to understand there's reasons behind what they're doing. Their own reasons, but there's some psychological, right, issue that they may be dealing with. And you have to not only keep your composure and not lose your temper, you have to expect denial. You see, someone who's pathological lies constantly, and they have a tendency to respond to everything with a lie. And if you confront them about this, they're definitely going to deny it, right? They could even get enraged and express shock and accusation. And the funny thing is, there's really great examples of this. If you've watched The Housewives, right? When one's being called out for a past indiscretion, and everybody's like, ooh, ah, and then stay tuned next week, right? Like a lot of that's lying, but some of them do. And you could see that on TV through script, even on that live show. What is it called? Reality television. You see the housewives carrying on and, oh my God, you did this. And there's a bunch of elephants in the room, and then all of a sudden it gets exposed. This is all entertainment, but expect denial. What do you want the person to say on live television, right? And kind of expect that they're going to get angry and upset and have some sort of shocking look on their face. Some have even faded. I've seen it. But remember that it's not really about you. Don't take it there. It's not hard to take being lied to personally. Really, it's not. But pathological lying isn't about you or me. The person may be driven by an underlying personality disorder. It could be anxiety or low self esteem. The best thing that we can do is be supportive, right? When we're talking about a person about their lies, remind them that, you know what, they don't need to impress you. You're going to be there for them. Let them know that you value them for who they really are. And sometimes they need that because they've been carrying this around with them so long. And a lot of it starts with trying to fit in. They don't know how to back down. And then when they meet a good friend that tells them you're okay for who you are, you don't need to do this, that's just one thing that's going to make them feel better. Some will still be in denial, but there will be some that will understand, and at least it'll give them a little bit of relief, a little bit of break, where they can, be themselves for a while. And every situation, because sometimes it just becomes a coping strategy for them. And that's why I said understanding is so important, right? And don't engage them. When you notice this person's lying, don't engage them. You know, you can question what they're saying, which may encourage them to stop the lie at some point, but don't engage them. Don't do it. You can also let them know that you don't want to continue the conversation when they're being dishonest. Just say, listen, I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to keep telling me this, right? I'm not going to want to discuss it. And in private, or if, see, sometimes someone gets hurt with the compulsive liar, because believe it or not, some of them compulsive liars have a tendency to turn their lies not just about themselves, but on other people. Yes, I said it, other people. When they lie about someone to gain favor with some friends, and then you ever see it when they won't say, they indicate that this person said it, but they won't say who told them that. They'll say, "Hey, I heard this about a person," but they won't say who told them this information, which means they're doing the lying themselves. So you have to be careful with that, right? And truth be told, once they direct it, even at other people, they get hurt. You have to address it. And I think one way you can address it is to kind of suggest medical help without judging or making them embarrassed or shaming them. Suggest that they can consider some professional help. And let them know it's not easy. These are courageous conversations, right? But if you're genuine and you're really concerned for their well being, you're actually going to make some of that suggestion. I'm sorry. However, just make sure that you aren't just talking at them. Make sure you're prepared with some information about pathological lying. Some will get offended, and some of you might never do that. But having a printout of an article or a pamphlet, something that they can refer to when they're ready, uh, just expressing your concern that their behavior is really resulting in maybe them not having friends and it's getting excessive and people seeing through it and they don't want to be around them because they feel that they're troublemakers. And some of them are troublemakers, but they need help understanding the troubles that they're going through. And they're only expressing what's going on inside of them. It's coming out. There's something that they need help with. And pathological liars, right, can be performers. They know how to captivate their audience by telling these elaborate and fantastic stories. And they can be very animated. And a lot of people like that. A lot of people don't. But it's something that's quite common among pathological liars. And along with knowing how they put these details together and how they express these stories, uh, it's entertaining to people, believe it or not. They're fascinated, right? Like, case in point where you might have a preacher, and I've seen this on, and I don't even know how it gets to television, but some of the preachers are on TV. If you ever see some of these channels, there's these preachers, they don't do it as much as they used to, but there's preachers up there telling people how they could heal them, and they're in wheelchairs, and all of a sudden these people are jumping out of wheel. They're liars, pathological liars, and they're using a religion to do it. Not all of them, but there's a few out there. They got people hooked, and they're like, we're going to keep you hooked. They're going to hire people. This is sad. It's disgraceful. But some of them hire people to be in the crowd. So when they talk about healing someone, somebody comes running up to the front of the stage. Some preacher's up there with his hand out, and all these people are bouncing around, right? And then once they bounce around enough, and the people are watching, and people who've had aches and pains could easily tell you that the pain's gone because they've been paid, right? It's an act. This is pathological lying at its greatest. And they do it over and over and over again. It's a system that some people do. And they do it to gain advantage, right? And it's natural for some of them, right? And you'd say that you wouldn't know why they're doing it, but you know why they're doing it. They're doing it to gain favor in those situations. But to the extent that some people go to, it's really wild. It's just really wild. Disappointing, but wild, but it happens. We live in that world that we have pathological liars that do more damage than good. That's the scary part of other people who need help and support and some guidance, and they're being fooled. And that's what we have to watch out for. There are ways that we can diagnose a pathological liar. It can be difficult, and sometimes it may even seem impossible because they're that good. But if we're speaking with the person and we conduct a medical history or an interview, it's the starting point, but it's not usually sufficient to make a proper diagnosis because of the person's tendency to what? To lie. So that makes it even more complex. But I do know that an important part of diagnosis pathological liars is determining if they know that person understands that they're lying. Or do they believe the lies that they're telling? Right? And there are people out there, you seen on TV when they had those crime shows. And what's that machine called? The polygraph? Some professionals use this polygraph. It's called the Lie Detector Test. Right? The test isn't to catch them in a lie, but to see how well or often they beat this polygraph test, which suggests that they believe their lies or they don't believe them, or have become good at using other measures to convince others of their lies. That machine will indicate if this person is somewhat manipulating the machine or if this is commonplace, but it'll give an indication. And there are others that go further and they interview family members and friends when diagnosing the pathological liar. It'll give an indication. They'll actually see a pattern of behavior. But once you understand that they're pathological and they're lying, they do need some sort of treatment. And that will depend upon whether or not this pathological lying is a symptom of an underlying psychiatric condition. Because treatment could include psychotherapy and it may also include medication for other issues that might be fueling this behavior. Drugs could be used to treat anxiety and depression. And this is what some of the people could be dealing with, right? So you have to empathize and cope with a pathological liar by understanding them or trying to understand what they're going through and what's causing this person to lie while you're being supportive. And I mean be supportive, not judging. Be supportive. It's very likely that this lying is a symptom of another issue that can be treated. So we're going to have to encourage them to get some help, some support that they may need to deal with this lying. Many of you may encounter a pathological liar and you may be one yourself. However, I will say that one of the best remedies is love, care, support, and guidance, and being genuine and learning that some of this behavior that we have, it takes a lot of care and understanding. And for us to do this, we have to be patient. So I want to say to my listeners, thank you. And be like the wise old bird and spread the word because it's something that a lot of us dismiss and we have to look deeper. We have to try to stop ourselves from doing the surface thinking and things just happen just because. 99% of the time, there's reasons behind some of the issues that we are dealing with. So I want to say to all of you, take care of yourselves.